Thank you, L'Oreal. Can't think of a better place to be on a Friday night in Central Illinois than the Brown Ballroom and our program this evening. I'd like to thank the entire student chapter of the Illinois State University NAACP and their advisor, Linda Foster, for all the hard work on putting this evening's event together. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to thank Jay Groves, the assistant to the president, for all the work that he's put in this afternoon and in helping organize the event as well. As we look, thank you. Jay is a pretty special guy. He actually does the work of 2 full-time employees, which when you're president and the state's not paying your bills, that's a good thing. As we look forward to hearing our honored guests this evening, I think it's important to keep in our thoughts the people around the world who need our inspiration and support. Our thoughts are certainly with the people of Haiti who continue their life and death struggles as they attempt to recover from a horrific earthquake. I'm pleased that our annual Martin Luther King Jr. dinner has now become such an important part of Illinois State University's year-long speakers series. Although our state's ongoing economic climate has presented us with many challenges and has forced us to make tough choices, I remain committed to bringing great and diverse minds to Illinois State University to better educate our students and better inform our community. It is now my great pleasure to introduce tonight's very special guest. Martin Luther King III has been motivating audiences around the world with an insightful message of hope and civility for decades. Taking the torch of his father, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., he continues the quest for equality and justice for all people. Actively involved in the fight for civil rights, King has led the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and most recently began a new organization, Realizing the Dream. Getting back to the core efforts of his father's dream, Realizing the Dream works to eradicate poverty in the United States. A human rights advocate, community activist, and political leader, King has traveled all over the world. His tireless message is based on the tenets of nonviolence and has moved and inspired people literally all over the world. Please join me in welcoming to Illinois State University, Martin Luther King.
Thank you very much, President Bowman, Mrs. Bowman, to all of the administration, faculty, staff, to the NAACP of Illinois State University and its student chapter president, Laurel Flowers. Great job. Your committee has brought all of us, I guess, here today. I come this evening sort of with mixed emotions as we continue to observe the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., who would have been 81 years old had he lived on last Friday, January 15th. But I certainly am honored to be here in Bloomington Normal, which sounds strange to me. To be I don't know which, I guess I'm in Bloomington now. I was in Normal earlier. No, I'm in Normal? Okay. But I really am honored to be here also to the President of Illinois Wesleyan, President Wilson. I've had the opportunity to speak at that university as well, and so, but as I come this evening, and I'm going to be brief. A I was talking to Mike Williams, and he told me I should be about an hour and a half. Now, those of you who probably know him know that's not true. But certainly I want to be appropriate this evening, because as we've observed this holiday, as we approach this holiday, the most catastrophic event that probably many of us have seen in our lifetime occurred just not too many hundred miles from our shores in the country of Haiti. And it's going to be some time before that country can be rebuilt as this tragedy continues to unfold. In fact, I think I'm here partially because Soledad O'Brien, I believe, was to have been the speaker. And as she is, as others, Anderson Cooper and others, doing an incredible job letting the world know what is going on in that country. So I guess I'm honored to stand in, I guess, for her, if that's what I'm doing. But I'm honored just to be here to talk about my father's dream, my mission. And I want to qualify that by saying, again, that I know Americans are wonderful. Whenever a crisis occurs anywhere in the world, we roll up our sleeves and are always willing to participate in helping. And my hope and prayer is that with this crisis, we understand that it won't be short term. You know, we rolled up our sleeves when we were attacked on September 11th, 2001. And then at some point, we deviated back to our normal patterns, which is what perhaps we should do. But I hope and pray that, as I say, for this crisis, that we stay focused on continuing to help to rebuild that nation. I believe that if my father were alive, he would be in the forefront of this particular struggle, because he often talked about what he called were the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. And while in one regard, particularly as it relates to race, we've made incredible strides in this nation. In 2008, the nation came together and elected its first African-American president to be installed in 2009, January of 2009. Incredible. But race is still an issue in America. And one day we will be able to say race is truly behind us, but it is not. It is not behind us when you look at the criminal system of America, that some would call a criminal justice system. And when you look at that system and see who comprises the population, largely African Americans, Latinos, and Hispanics, and poor whites. So the justice system is working, but it's not working for all. We have not a great indigent defense system. In fact, your state and one of your former governors, not the last, for you all had some interesting governors over the last few years. But one of your former governors did something revolutionary. And he happened to be a Republican. Not that it matters if you're a Democrat or Republican. But he found out that someone had been killed in this state by DNA evidence who did not commit the crime. And he put a moratorium on the death penalty, which is unheard of because most folk, you know, we just believe in killing folk. We just kill them. And, you know, I have to stand on the position being against the death penalty. And I come to it in a different way than most, but my father was killed when I was 10 years old. My grandmother was killed when I was 16 years old. My father by a white person, my grandmother by a black person, and I could have legitimately just disliked all of y'all. But I'm thankful that I was exposed to the spirit of love, that spirit which teaches forgiveness, so that you dislike the evil act, but you still love the individual. That's certainly what Martin Luther King Jr. taught. That's what Martin Luther King Sr., my grandfather and my grandmother taught. That's what my mom taught us in our home. And so we never, ever harbored any hatred toward that at the time we thought James Earl Ray, who was accused, but not later on we found out was not, but that's another story for another day, the killer of our father. We never harbored any hatred towards Marcus Wayne Chenault, who killed our grandmother. And so historically, we have been against the death penalty. But let me get back to my point. Because if you go to any jail in the state of Illinois, any major urban jail, whether it's in Cook County or whether it's in this county, I used to know the name. Somebody told me, but you know, some people have Alzheimer's. I got part-timers. Sometimes, you know, wherever you go, you'll find a disproportionate number of people of color in that system. And so I think there's a twofold responsibility. Richard Pryor used to say it best coming from Peoria, not somewhere around here. He said you go down to the criminal justice system looking for justice and all you'll find is just us. Now, that's a sad commentary in 2010, but a commentary that is real and a commentary that must be addressed. So I started off by saying there's a problem with the system because there's not enough defense. Appropriate defense. But there also is a problem with some who are parenting, because biblically it says that if you train up a child in the way that they should go, when that child is old, they will not depart from that training. And some have abandoned that responsibility. So there's a twofold obligation, one on behalf of the system and one on behalf of us as a community. We can and we must do a better job. That is an issue that has to be addressed. I don't believe that God made human beings for us to be in jail. And I'm not suggesting that there are not some folks in jail who belong there. Thank God we got somewhere to put some folks. But there are a lot of people who are in jail who probably do not belong there. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Going back to poverty, racism, and militarism. We know the numbers. There's no need to state what they are. But we know that because of a bad economy, the numbers of poverty are increasing dramatically. We know that the numbers that are growing most are mothers and children. And you know, there's something wrong with a society that does not treat its most precious resource appropriately. Because clearly our most precious resource would be, in fact, our children. How are we going to address that issue in the future? We must find a better way, a more humane way to address our children. Just as we've got to find a way to put this economy back to work. President Bowman and I were talking about the disparities that exist in our society and how they are becoming greater and greater, and perhaps will become even greater. But we have the ability to do almost anything. We just have not yet identified the will. But when ability and will meet, you come up with something called results. Maybe we have to look deep down into the depths of our souls. But we must identify that will. Just as we have identified a willingness to be helpful in Haiti, we've got to identify a willingness to do some things, more things here at home, if we want our nation to retain its greatness. We're spending, on the other hand, in relationship to militarism, billions and billions of dollars every month on militarism, on death and destruction. And yet we don't quite want to spend the same amount on life and the preservation of life. It seems that that's a strange commentary. But we'll find all the monies we need to support military intervention. I'm not convinced, in fact, I'm totally convinced that all of our solutions are not military solutions. You know, I'm a big supporter of the president's, big supporter. However, I'm very concerned about our posture in Afghanistan with 30,000 more troops poised to go there. Why? Because I don't believe that you can solve terrorism by terrorizing others. Maybe that's not the intent, but that's what will ultimately happen when you escalate troops. You know, because Americans are afraid. I mean, you remember when we were looking for Osama bin Laden? Y'all don't even talk about it no more. I mean, Osama represented Al-Qaeda. He was the one. He was the terrorist we had to get. And it's like nobody's like, you know, the news stopped talking about it, and, you know, we never could find him. I mean, they told us he had dialysis machine that he had to carry around with him because he had, you know, all kind of issues. They told us he rode around on donkeys, horses, low-tech. I mean, it's very interesting because I was riding in a car with somebody not long ago. Well, it's probably been several years now, and we were lost. And we pushed that OnStar button, and they told us what street we were on. They told us how to get where we needed to go, and they weren't anywhere in the city where we were. So now, it seemed like to me if they could do that, how come we can't find Osama bin Laden? I mean, we have the technology that takes a picture of the earth every millisecond. I mean, you can make a whole movie. We can find automobile tags in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, in South America, in the Antarctic, I mean, in snow. You can see the automobile tags if they exist. On the African continent, you can't find a man moving around on some donkeys at night on horses or whatever. But this is, we get fed a diet of information, and we just kind of, you know, Osama bin Laden, if he is the personification of this evil, then we need to find him and bring him to justice. Now, I'm not suggesting kill him, but bring him to justice, the world court. I mean, if it can be proven that he's done all these things, then he should stand trial at the world court. But don't act like, you know, he doesn't exist. We moved on and identified. There's some new Osamas now, all of those, and we don't know what happened to the Osama. So all I'm saying is we've got to do things in a different way. Just like our system of public education. We have some of the finest colleges and universities in the world. But there's something clearly wrong with our primary and secondary public education system. We are not preparing our children for the future. And we, as many of us here, are academicians, so we understand that. But we got to find a way to do a better job to ensure that our young people are prepared so that when they come to Illinois State University and other institutions in the state and around this country, that they can matriculate and do just as well as anyone else in the world. Because that's what America was at one time known for. And at some point, maybe 40, 50 years ago, we just said, well, those people over there, those poor whites, those black folk, those Latino and Hispanic, we don't worry about if they get educated or not. I mean, when I was in school, you couldn't just, it seems like we are putting children out of school. We're suspending them and expelling them. When I was growing up, there were truant officers and others who wouldn't allow you to just wander on the streets. You could not do what, you know, we don't even care. We just throw it, it doesn't matter. And then you wonder why we're behind. I mean, that's an area as it relates to education where reform is truly needed. And the need is going to come, and the leadership, I think, must come perhaps from some of the students today. I mean, if a student is able at 21 to lead a platoon of troops, a lieutenant in the military, if you go to college and once you finish, you become a lieutenant in the military, you can lead troops and tell folk, if they have to execute, you give the order. Now, if you can do that, then why can't you also be Board of Education members? Why can't you also be state representatives? Why can't you also be county commissioners? You can. It's a matter of prioritizing and saying, I want to do something to make a difference here because I have ideas that I think need to be heard. And people will support you. Certainly your peers will support you, but others will support you. Even while you're here for the 4 years that you are here, you can become engaged and become an elected official. We need more ingenuity at that level. Well, God knows we need more leadership, because America has got some very deep problems, just as the world does. But we've been accustomed to being problem solvers. We've resolved problems. And so I think that in 2010 and beyond, there's a challenge put before us. You know, my dad and his team did things against insurmountable odds. I mean, they transformed our nation in a real sense, but using the mechanism, using the method of nonviolence. Nonviolence is a powerful weapon. They never used one stick, one brick, one gun, but they changed America. And I guess what I'm saying this evening is that method is still available for us to use in America and around the world. Last year, I had the opportunity to travel to India, and then from India to Kenya, and then from Kenya to Bosnia, and then from Bosnia to Serbia, and then from Serbia to Israel, and then from Israel to South Africa, and then from South Africa to Sri Lanka. And all of those communities that we worked in, realizing the dream, we were sharing the nonviolent philosophy of Martin Luther King Jr. And guess what? The people that we talked to wanted to have more of this. You know, Bosnia was engaged in war between 1991 and 95. So the Bosniaks and the Croats and the Serbs legitimately don't trust each other, even though it's been 15 years. And then in Israel, we know about the Palestinians and the Israelis and the constant struggle that's going on. But even those young people, Israelis and Palestinians, wanted to sit down and learn about conflict resolution. In Sri Lanka, well, in Kenya was engaged in some fighting a few years back at their election, the time of the election. And the Kenyans wanted to learn the philosophy that Martin Luther King Jr. used. And then in South Africa, even we were able to identify South Africans who wanted to learn this philosophy. And ultimately in November in Sri Lanka, where we'll be going in about a couple of weeks back to Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans who just came out of war, 30 years had been fighting, want to embrace conflict resolution. Now my point is, people are hungry for different ways of doing things. People don't want to just embrace violence. You know, in America, we seem to not realize that we subliminally program ourselves to embrace violence. What do I mean? Well, we let our children watch cartoons. 6 out of 10 of them are violent. Then they watch regular television. 7 out of 10 television shows have violence in them. Then they learn video games, and video games, 6 or 7 out of 10 of them are about blowing up something and shooting something. And then they go to the theater. I went to see a movie, my wife and I went to see in Viticus just a few weeks ago about South Africa, and it reminded me of how incredible President Nelson Mandela is, Madiba is, just to embrace forgiveness. That movie is about, by the way, the South African football team, or soccer team, as we know it. And that football team, the name that it had, the black South Africans wanted to change the name of that team after apartheid. But President Mandela understood why it was important to maintain that, to ensure that the white community felt a part and participated. And he taught forgiveness, being in jail 27 years and coming out and forgiving people. That's a message we as Americans need to learn, how to forgive, because we harbor hostility and hatred, and we don't yet know how to forgive. But I say that to say that at that movie, I saw 7 trailers of movies coming out, and 6 of them were violent and blowing up something and shooting something, and I was so discouraged. So my point is that if we are consuming a diet of violence, then we ultimately may act violently. We must find a way to change that which we consume. if we're able to do that, then I think we will respond in a different way. Yes, you may say, well, you know, I'm not impacted by what I see, but that's just not true. We all are some way, some form or fashion impacted by what we embrace. You know, America, I believe, is at a crossroads. And the issue may not be health care, while that's critically important to me and many others. Critically important. But it's as important to get the economy working again. Because when we have people working and feeling like there's opportunity and optimistic, I mean, we know of the students that will graduate from colleges and universities and how long it takes for them to find jobs. I mean, this is real right now, next year. That's not to be pessimistic. You have to be realistic to understand just where we are. We've got some major challenges. But you know, we will roll up our sleeves and we will do our best because that's who we are. At the end of the day, when our backs are pushed against the wall, I believe that we must and will do better because we, at the root, at the heart, the foundation of who we are a great nation. And there have been glimmers of greatness that we have seen from time to time. Not just in one leader, but leadership from time to time. There have been glimmers of leadership from our not just elected officials, but from our religious leaders, from some of our outstanding business leaders, from some of our community leaders. And that is something that we need more of. But it all begins with a foundation, the foundation for which, or from which we stand. And so I hope and pray that we as Americans learn how to give more unselfishly. And then we got to find out what our actual calling is. My dad used to say that in life, you must find out what your calling is. And when you find out what it is, you must do your job well. He went on to say that you must do that job so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn could do that job no better. He went on to say that even in life, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, why go on and sweep streets like Michelangelo carved marble. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets like Raphael painted pictures. Sweep streets so well that all the host of the heavens and earth would have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper that did his job well. That is part of our calling. We must find out what it is that we can do. What can we do to make a difference? Not just for our own families, but in the lives of others. I learned as a child that life was not easy. And it didn't matter, you know, I was blessed to have been able to travel. I thank God I've been able to travel to many places in our world. But I still learned that no matter who you are, that you can learn something from almost anybody. I mean, the day we cease to learn, then you might as well go on to glory. And so I try to learn from everybody all the time, even if it's things that, you know, I know that I shouldn't do. You just got to keep your mind open because we're in an interesting time. And I tell you what, we don't know, we know that, for example, thank God we've not had any terrorist activity recently, since 2001. But we've got to conduct ourselves in an even greater way so that maybe we can reduce that even possibility. I believe that we can, but I don't believe we can do it by using exclusively militarism. I mean, we've got to dialogue with people. I mean, we've got to constantly be engaged in trying to understand others, because we kind of live in a bubble in the United States, and we don't realize sometimes what others have to go through. Thank God for what we have, but we've got to get out of our own comfort zone. We have to go into areas that are not comfortable for us. I mean, that's why one day we will address the issues of race. People don't like to talk about race because they say, well, we've resolved that. Well, we're closer than we ever were, but as I said earlier, we got work to do there. We've got a huge job to do in relationship to poverty, and a huge job to do in relationship to the militaristic industrial complex. Because we do have to learn to put our swords and shields down and study war no more. I mean, the day that we are close to doing those things, then we can say that the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. is close to being fulfilled. But I would venture to say at this point, we're not really even close. Now, I'm not suggesting that, again, we hadn't made progress, and I'm not saying that there's not a body of work that we all can do. I'm saying there is a body of work that we must be involved in. I certainly, as the song says, am no ways tired, because I know we've come much too far than where we started. For nobody ever told any of us that our roads would be easy. But I know our God did not bring any of us this far just to leave us. I hope that when we leave this evening, that next year, when we approach the Martin Luther King Jr. program, and that's what I love about January. I say, okay, we didn't achieve the dream and vision in 2010. But every January we have the opportunity to start anew. And one day we will achieve components of that vision, significant components of that vision. Why? Because it is just and right. And there's nothing more powerful in all the world than an idea whose time has come. And I believe that idea and the time is coming. And finally, I want to leave you with something, even though we're in an academic environment. I want to just leave you with a few words that are important to me, because my dad was a preacher. My great-grandfather was. My great-grandfather was. My father's brother was. My sister is. My cousins are. So I come from a family of preachers, although I certainly am not. But I know with preaching and prayer, things change. You see, we are maneuvering through some very difficult scenarios. But I hope that we never forget the importance of prayer. The words are stated, however, that prayers cannot be answered unless they are prayed. For certainly life without purpose is barren indeed, for there cannot be a harvest unless you plant seed. There cannot be attainment unless there's a goal, for man is just a robot unless there's a soul. If we send no ships out, no ships will come in. For unless there's a contest, nobody can win. For games cannot be won unless they are played, and prayers cannot be answered unless they are prayed. So whatever is wrong with your life today, I'm here to tell you, you will find a solution if you kneel down and pray. Not just for pleasure, enjoyment, and health, not just for honors, prestige, and wealth, but pray for purpose to make life worth living, and pray for the joy of unselfish giving. For a great is your gladness and rich your reward when you make your life's purpose the choice of the Lord's. Thank you very much, and may God bless each and every one of you always.